There's a forgotten corner of history where the greatest currency wasn't gold, silver, land, or soldiers. It was time, literal hours, measured, recorded, traded, taxed, and sold. Long before modern economics gave us productivity graphs and labor markets, an ancient empire carved a strange system into the bedrock of its society. A civilization where your value wasn't in what you owned, but in the time you could give. This is the buried story of an empire that didn't just count time. It monetized it. And in doing so, it rewrote the rules of wealth centuries before the modern world caught up. Travel back nearly 3,000 years to the river valleys of what is now Central America. The land is fertile, the seasons predictable, and the people, known today through archaeology, are organized in ways that puzzle historians. Their cities are cleanly grid, their workshops busy, their temples precise. But what stands out most are the clay tablets scattered across excavation sites. They don't record grain. They don't record tribute. They record hours. Hours worked. Hours promised. Hours owed. To understand why, you must understand the world they lived in. Metal was rare, too rare to serve as universal currency. Trade depended on reciprocity, seasonality, and trust. Farmers grew crops together. Builders raised homes together. Hunters shared meat. Labor was the heartbeat of the entire system. So this empire, let's call them the Kaan Dominion, known in fragments of regional mythology, created a standardized way to measure what mattered most: human time. Their government built a vast network of public registries. Every household received a small fire tablet at the start of each season. Etched onto the top was a simple mark, your family's symbol. Beneath it, a column of small boxes. Each box represented a block of time, roughly 2 hours. If you repaired a neighbor's roof, one box was scratched out and recorded in the local hall. If someone wove cloth for your household, a box was added to your ledger. If the state needed labor for irrigation canals or storage pits, families paid their tax in hours, blocks of time donated to public works. In this system, time became a universal equalizer. You didn't need gold to participate in society. You needed hours. And unlike wealth that could be hidden, hoarded, or inherited unfairly, every household began each season with the same time sheet. What separated the prosperous from the struggling wasn't land or birthright. It was how strategically they used and traded their time. But this system wasn't born out of idealism. It came from necessity. The Dominion sat between rival powers, metal-rich kingdoms to the north and seafaring traders to the south. Without mines or fleets, they needed stability. They needed cohesion. They needed a way to build infrastructure with limited resources. When storms flooded their fields, it was time-taxed labor that rebuilt terraces. When drought threatened food security, it was shared hours that irrigated farmland. Slowly, their time economy became a machine. Specialized guilds formed: builders, potters, weavers, engineers. These guilds priced their work not in items but in time blocks. A well-mended wall cost 3 hours. A full cloak, 30 hours. A ceremonial carving, perhaps 60. Time became a marketable commodity, and people traded it with astonishing fluidity. The most skilled workers, architects, healers, astronomers, became time-rich. They accumulated hours like merchants in other civilizations accumulated gold. But power never travels alone. With time came politics. A ruling council, selected from elite families, controlled the registry halls. They could issue time credits, freeze household accounts, or forgive time debts. Slowly, the simple system grew intricate. Time loans appeared. Time interest. Time futures. Promises of labor that might be delivered years later. At the height of the Dominion, families didn't just farm. They invested. They lent hours to rising guilds, earning time back with interest. They sold their unused hours to traders passing through their territory. They scheduled labor for massive public works months in advance. In a world without coin, the Dominion created a labor-backed financial system centuries before modern economics knew the concept. But the empire's greatest innovation became its greatest weakness. As generations passed, Powerful families found ways to manipulate the system. They collected time debts from poorer households. They inherited hours from relatives. They controlled time registries in key cities. Over decades, this created a new class divide. The wealthy no longer worked in the fields. They lived off time obligations, the ancient equivalent of passive income. And the poor? They were trapped in cycles of time debt they could never repay. Then came the drought. For 2 consecutive seasons, crops failed. Families who had barely survived now owed time they physically didn't have the strength to give. Hours accumulated like stones around their necks. Time lenders, wanting to protect their investments, demanded labor precisely when people were weakest. Tensions erupted. Records show abandoned tablets, broken in half as symbolic rebellion. Registry halls were burned. Time debts disappeared in smoke. As administrative control weakened, cities drifted apart, guilds broke their agreements, and the cooperative foundation that built the Dominion began to fracture. When an invading kingdom arrived decades later, the Dominion didn't fall because of superior weapons. It fell because its time economy, once its strength, had drained the unity from its people. And yet the idea survived, because centuries later, in civilizations scattered across the world, echoes of the Dominion's time economy reappeared. In medieval Europe, peasants owed labor tax to their lords. In early America, indentured servitude converted human time into currency. In modern economies, wages measure time's monetary value. Today, companies sell productivity the same way ancient guilds sold tasks. And in the gig economy, time itself, hourly rates, task payments, subscription access, has become the modern equivalent of the ancient Dominion's tablets. The empire that sold time is gone, but its idea that time can be the foundation of wealth never disappeared. It simply evolved. In a world where billions of dollars are traded every second, where workers exchange hours for salaries, where companies monetize attention, where time is the true scarcity of the digital age, we are all still part of an economy built on the same principle. The real currency has always been time. The Dominion just understood it first. Their story is not a cautionary tale. It is a reminder. Economies succeed when time is shared. They collapse when time is exploited. And the civilizations that endure are the ones that never forget the oldest truth in history. Wealth can be replaced. Resources can be restored. But time can only be spent once. But the deeper we look into the Dominion's ruins, the more one question rises above the others. How did a civilization that engineered such an advanced economic system simply vanish without passing down a single written doctrine? Archaeologists now believe the answer lies beneath a silent revolution, one that didn't happen suddenly, but slowly, like water thinning the bedrock beneath a river. Because while the Dominion's registries managed time, they failed to manage something far more dangerous: human ambition. The ruling council should have been the guardians of the system. Instead, they became its brokers. With their control over the time registries, they began offering extensions to certain households, extra hours, forgiven debts, or privileged access to guild labor. But they didn't give these favors freely. They traded them. Hours were exchanged for political loyalty. Hours purchased influence. Hours bought protection. Hours became leverage. What began as a tool for social equity slowly became a tool for quiet domination. And the people noticed. One of the most chilling discoveries from the Dominion's final century comes from a tablet found near an abandoned hall. Its symbols show a pair of hands bound by vines, and beneath it, a row of empty boxes. Historians interpret this as a protest symbol, labor owed to the system, but forcibly taken by those who controlled it. The Dominion's time economy was collapsing into something modern societies know all too well. A system where time is extracted from the many to enrich the few. As resentment grew, so did the fractures. Farmers withheld time payments. Guilds refused to honor elite contracts. Public works slowed as families demanded fair distribution. And entire regions began to break away administratively. The empire that once ran like a synchronized clock now ticked unevenly. Then came the final turning point. In what scholars believe was a desperate attempt to restore order, the ruling council announced a sweeping reform. One massive central registry that would control every hour in the Dominion, state, household, guild, and temple alike. It was the largest bureaucratic gamble in ancient history, and it failed catastrophically. The moment the reform was announced, local leaders rebelled. Cities sealed their registries. Guilds burned their tablets. Farmers refused to acknowledge centralized time mandates. Villages went dark, refusing to send reports. The Dominion's greatest innovation, its unified time economy, became impossible to enforce. And in this chaos, the invaders arrived. They didn't need siege engines. They didn't need advanced weapons. They didn't need overwhelming numbers. They simply needed to walk into an empire tearing itself apart. The cities fell not through battle, but through abandonment. The registry halls, once the administrative heart of their society, stood empty. And the clay tablets that once measured the empire's entire economic life were discarded, cracked, or buried beneath collapsing structures. But here's the twist history rarely acknowledges. The invaders didn't understand the system they had inherited. To them, the tablets were meaningless rectangles of clay. So they used them for construction fill, for hearthstones, even for pottery temper. And with each reused tablet, generations of records were erased from existence. The Dominion's brilliance was not destroyed through war, it was lost through ignorance. Yet the echoes remained. Archaeologists eventually noticed something uncanny. The civilizations that replaced the Dominion began adopting new forms of labor coordination. Not immediately, not consciously, but gradually, through the shared practices of integrated communities. Seasonal labor mandates, rotating village obligations, public work cycles, measured work quotas, and in some cases, symbolic markers representing hours of service. These ideas re-emerged centuries later, in medieval Europe's corvée labor, in ancient Asia's household rotations, in colonial-era indenture systems, and eventually in the modern wage economy. The Dominion never wrote down its economic philosophy, but its concepts survived, stitched quietly into human civilization like invisible DNA. And as historians reconstructed the fragments, a more unsettling realization emerged. In many ways, our modern world operates exactly like the Dominion once did, only scaled up, digitized, and monetized. Today, time is still the true currency. You sell hours to employers. You rent hours from corporations. You pay interest in time when debts grow. You are taxed on your time in the form of labor obligations. Your value is measured by productivity, the modern word for time converted into output. And in the digital age, something even stranger has happened. Your attention, your cognitive time, has become the most profitable commodity on Earth. Social. Platforms buy and sell your minutes. Apps fight for your seconds. Corporations compete for your focus. The global economy thrives on extracting time the same way ancient empires extracted labor. We didn't escape the Dominion. We became a more complex version of it. The difference? Our time is measured not in clay boxes, but in data. And just like the Dominion's elite, modern corporations have mastered the art of monetizing human hours through subscriptions, salary structures, algorithmic design, and productivity systems that convert personal time into global wealth. The empire that sold time may be gone, but its blueprint is everywhere. What remains is the lesson the Dominion left behind. A lesson they learned too late. A society survives not when time is controlled, but when time is respected. Because in every generation, every nation, every economy, the same truth returns. Gold can buy influence. Land can shape power, but only time can build a civilization. And once it runs out, no empire, ancient or modern, can buy it back.